What if your next creative breakthrough wasn't flat on the page, but was folded, stitched, or standing upright on your table? I'm Tara Axford, course advisor at Fibre Arts Take 2. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the Gadigal people, the traditional custodians of the land I'm speaking to you from today, in this week's Friday Feature Artist Talk, where we're so excited to step into the playful, inventive world of New Zealand printmaker and mixed media artist Toni Hartill. Toni's work doesn't stay still for long. It flips, folds, hides, reveals. It turns scraps into surprises and invites you to see your art not as something fixed in a frame, but something that opens, tells a story, and invites people in. This week, we're also celebrating the launch of Toni's signature online course, Unbound, a joyful hands-on adventure into the world of unconventional artist books. But this isn't a bookbinding course in the traditional sense. You won't need fancy tools or a technical know-how, just curiosity, some scraps from your stash, and a willingness to explore. In our conversation, Toni shares how she moved from perfectionism to playful making, how she gathers and builds with meaning, and how even the smallest offcuts can hold stories worth telling. We'll talk about process, storytelling, and why it's sometimes more fun to follow the folds than the rules. So if your creativity's been craving a shake-up, or you've ever looked at your studio scraps and wondered, now what? This one's for you. Let's dive in as we welcome you, wherever you are, and say hello to Toni Hartill, this week's Friday Feature Artist.
Hi everyone and welcome, and please say hello in the chat and tell us where you're tuning in from. Thanks for joining today, and for those in the live stream, we can certainly share some of your questions with Toni, so please pop them in the chat. Welcome, Toni.
Hi Tara, thank you so much.
I'm thrilled to be chatting with you today. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Nervous, but yeah, really excited. I'm so excited that it was about a year ago that I was invited to do this course, and it's just been such a crazy year. So to finally get to this day where the course is launching is just so crazy exciting.
Yes, absolutely. And we've got lots of people joining in, so I just want to welcome those people. Hi, Janice. Hi, Mickey. So many. Can't really go through them all, but let us just know that we have a mix of people from around the world. Kia ora, lots of people, New Zealand, US, everyone. So exciting, and thanks everyone for joining in. And if you've got questions, yes, we'd love to hear them. So we did originally meet for a Friday Feature Artist 3 years ago. So if you're the listener, want to hear more about Toni's creative backstory, you can find us on YouTube. So today we're going to be focusing on artist books and the art of said book. Can you tell us a bit about your first artist book? How did that come to be?
Well, I didn't even know I was making an artist book when I made it. And I was kind of in a stuck place and didn't really know where I was kind of stuck creatively and didn't really know what I was going to do next. And so I just sat at this table here in the kitchen and I just started painting and collaging, and just kind of like a therapeutic creative session just to try and get something started. And it just evolved into a little book. And yeah, and it wasn't until I actually stuck it all together and I'd sort of collaged in little words, and I realized that it had a message. It's a very personal message for myself about just sort of picking myself up and moving forward. And yeah, so that was my very first artist book that I didn't know was an artist book. And then I did a workshop in 2016, and we actually created, I was introduced formally to artist books, and it just completely blew my mind about the possibilities. And that's when I made it was just a tiny little flag book out of some scraps. And I felt just almost unreasonably excited. It was just like one little piece of paper folded into a concertina with some little flags, and everything was scrappy, and it was just done in a matter of half an hour. But I was just so excited. I can remember that excitement of, just what was possible. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that, scraps and that excitement. And I think that's probably going to be a word that we're going to be hearing over and over again. We are meeting with excitement because today is the day that your online course, Unbound, launches. Congratulations. The doors are open at 9:00. What was it like preparing to share your creative process in this online format?
Wow, gosh. I mean, first of all, when I was asked, I was like, seriously? What could I fill a course with? And then when I went away on holiday, and I must have got really relaxed, because then I said, yeah, what the heck, let's do it. And then when the work started of actually trying to put together everything of how it was going to become like a whole course, sort of from a foundation skills all the way through, it was quite a mind-blowing experience to actually realize I had, first of all, like to unpick my process and to be able to understand how was I going to teach that in a logical way so that people could understand my process. And then to realize that I actually did have a process. You kind of think when you're creating that, you just make stuff and you kind of get it exhibited or things just happen. But to have to go through and think, well, how am I going to teach this? I think it's been an incredible learning experience for just to look at my own practice. And so it's been quite an amazing experience. Yeah.
And I have been lucky enough to be alongside watching that process. And, the next thing I think that you found as the months sort of went through was actually how to stop. Like it just
Yeah, I know.
You keep adding. And and even through the filming, that was just really interesting too, just seeing how all of those things that you just keep adding to them. And that was just
I know. Yeah. Quantity was not a problem.
Definitely. Now, rather than sort of drill you with all the questions about what's going into the course, I'm just going to share what we call the show reel. So that just explains a bit more of an overview of the course. This goes for 2.5 minutes, but yes, I think it covers so many things that we're going to talk about next. So I'd love to share that with everyone now.
The word unbound conjures up sort of like springing free and not being constricted by rules and other people's perceptions, just letting your creative spirit loose. This is your chance to really let loose, to learn some new skills and techniques, and even find a new community of fellow artists that will inspire and support you. If you're the type of person who has lots of drawers of old work that's not quite right to frame, you have materials that you like to collect, artist books is the perfect way to use any of that material. Since I discovered artist books, it was really the turning point in my practice that I realised that I don't have to put my work behind glass or on a wall or in a sort of a structured format. I just love the way that you can really engage and the audience can really become a part of the book and experience it firsthand. It's just really that real personal, direct involvement with the art piece. When I'm working on an artist's book, it's kind of a voyage of discovery, really. I don't have a plan, I don't know where I'm going, and that's really exciting. I can never control all of the process, and that's really wonderful because you can create work that you never knew was possible. I really like to stretch and challenge any of the ideas. There are no rules. It's about really freeing up and listening to your gut, your inner voice about what it is that you really want to be doing. It's all inside of you already. You know it's there because you've been inspired to create it. I want to keep this course really accessible. From wherever you are, you'll be able to grow your practice and your skill and go in completely new directions. You can expect to feel supported and encouraged every step of the way, and at the end, I'm hoping that you're going to feel just really inspired and excited, and I'm hoping that this course will allow you to really free up your practice. There's so many possibilities that you would never expect. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this course really opens up your arts practice.
Amazing. And so all of those things, exactly. And for those of you that are just listening to this as a podcast, please head over to fiberartstake2.com and you'll be able to look for Unbound and you'll be able to see the visuals that we just saw there. So freeing up, not being constricted, those traditional formats like Coptic binding come up when we think of bookmaking. How did you leapfrog over that and get to the fun stuff, those structures you work with?
Well, I guess like for me, it's content comes first. And so it's about the storytelling or whatever the piece will be about. So it's not necessarily the structure unless the structure informs the story. And although I've always admired bookbinding, a lot of the time we see a beautifully bound book and it's all about the stitching and the way that the book is crafted. And it might end up as an empty book that somebody else will put content into. And I guess I feel a bit daunted at, the skills involved. There's a lot of really technical skills involved in bookbinding. And for me, that I know that being a perfectionist, I could get completely caught up in that and trying to create beautiful books. But I want my creativity, my imagination and my play to come first. And so I've intentionally tried not to learn too many of those bookbinding skills that get me caught up in technicalities. And I much prefer just to kind of ignore the rules or break the rules and just so that I can work much faster and more responsibly. And so I do cringe a little bit when I have bookbinders come to my workshops because I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I'm folding it all wrong or I'm not taking notice of, the paper grain and stuff like that. But yeah, I like to just let the creativity lead the way. And then when I find that there's a problem, like the paper might buckle, and that's when I go, oh, okay, so now I need to know why I should look at the paper grain and I think about those kind of rules and bring that in.
Yeah, I do really like your process. And we did see some beautiful imagery there. I'm just going to bring up on screen vitamin C. Is that
that was the model I made that was a much smaller version that I made to experiment with that as a format for an artist book. And so those are just the small tuna cans. And then I went on to create the larger piece, vitamin C. And so the idea is that the tube is the container or the cover of the book. And then each of the little tins is a separate little diorama which tells a story, and they all go inside the book. So they're like chapters or verses or stories within the cover of the book.
Gorgeous. And I love how that part of the course really does look, or your approach generally does really ask that question of, what is an artist book and how do we perceive that? And is that different to what we might have thought? So the fact that the audience has a different experience, that direct involvement with an art piece, I get the sense that you love engaging with your own work, but are there moments or stories that you can recall that others sort of talk to you about it when they see your work on display?
Yeah, I think that's one of the really nice things where I like artist books as opposed to work that's framed on a wall where the viewer is like a spectator looking at your work as opposed to becoming a participant in your work when they're handling it. And it's one of the things I love to do is watching people just interact with my work and just seeing, are they interacting with it the way that I expected them to? Are they turning the pages, or are they discovering those little surprises inside pockets, or opening out little fold outs and things and discovering things, or are they, what are they missing that, and so that sort of informs me for how I might make the next piece. But one of my earliest works was I did a series of cascade books when I was first experimenting with the idea of cascade books, and I had a group of, I think there were 2 larger ones and 3 small ones on the wall. And normally when you go into an exhibition, you're not supposed to touch the artwork, but I was encouraging people, you're allowed to lift the layers, go in and have a look. And so people were walking up to the wall and kind of looking sideways like, am I allowed to do this really? And then just peering under the layers. And I did a really big piece like that, which was like 2 meters long, hanging on the wall. And I put a sign on the wall, and I let the gallery owners know that it was my intention people should touch it. And at the opening, if nobody was interacting with it, I'd send my husband over to start interacting so that other people would see, oh, look, you can touch it. And so I've got some great photos of like groups of people all kind of lifting all these layers and peering underneath. And that's, yeah, to me, that's what I really love, is seeing other people, yeah, really exploring your work.
Yeah, fantastic. And I hope that this is going to relate to what you just said.
Yeah, that's a later cascade book. So yeah, sometimes I have it so that the layers aren't intended to be lifted, but often, like with that one there, the layers can be lifted and you'll discover sort of little intricate stitching or tiny details. The more you lift the layers, the more you'll find. So yeah, I like to hide surprise.
So that sort of vertical format that fits flat against a wall, and as you said, is consisted of layers that cascade down. So, and also one thing that we get to see more about your work is that the pages don't necessarily tell a traditional story in the sense of words and pictures, that they can be made up of textures and different types of things that formulate those pages.
Lots of mark making. Like, I just love mark making. And so I think you can incorporate so much sort of symbolism or motifs or experiences through mark making that then, and building them up in lovely rich layers and thinking about color palette, all of those things, sort of gives a story in itself. So yeah, that's something I really love to explore. And I think that gives personality to your own work. So you might be using structures that are quite common and lots of people use them, but you make them your own by your own mark making and imagery and the detailing, the way that you do, apply detailing and embellishments. So excellent.
And that'll be one of the wonderful things. Again, I've been privileged to be able to see so many ways that students have responded to Take Two courses, and seeing how students make things their own is just one of the wonderful things about, yes, there's the technique, there's the instruction, but of course we all come from so many different backgrounds and things that we bring to the work, and that'll be wonderful to see how your students respond to the Cascade book. In that showreel before, I think the idea came up of not having a plan. Now, that sounds like a magic formula. And then I recall being on set for the filming, and you were talking about found objects and how they can then spark an idea. And then you grabbed your kitchen utensils. Can you tell us
what those?
Yes, exactly. And then for some reason, apparently that can spark an idea for a artist book. Can you tell us a little bit more about how this magic spark of yours works?
I remember that day when we were filming this module, and I asked one of the crew to pass me the pot of utensils to put on the table, and everybody was kind of like, what? And I could tell nobody knew what was coming. But it's just this simple thing of that anything, for me, I think anything can inspire an idea. And so something as simple as your kitchen utensils, like kitchen utensils have a purpose. There might be something that's old that was your grandmother's and that reminds you of like memories of your grandmother. She used to bake, she cared for the family. You could create, the object could become part of your artist's book, so you can apply things to this item. Like I could have prints, or imagery or wording attached to this. I could recreate this as a paper object and create prints. I could create a whole pot of utensils that tell a story, you know. So it's like, I don't think anything's safe from offering up ideas. Yeah, you know, everywhere I look, there's something that I think, you know, I'm just looking at the toaster across the room here and I'm imagining stories, you know, popping out of it. You know, you could talk about the family, you know, all sorts of things. So yeah, nothing's safe. There's inspiration everywhere. So I think with this course, one of the things is that you won't have a problem once I start to hopefully inspire you with ideas of ways of starting, that you won't have problems about starting. I'm hoping that, like me, your head will be so full of ideas, and the problem will be, how will you stop those ideas coming?
Yeah, that was very infectious. And as you say, the more I think I was in your orbit of that, and it did very much sort of carry on, of suddenly everywhere there just did seem to be possibilities, which was fantastic. You said that Unbound is about breaking out of the frame. You might have just talked a little bit about that before. What does that mean for you, or how did that title seem particularly apt?
Well, that's really interesting, because we came up, well, the team came up with the title right at the beginning, and it's kind of like goes with book binding, but it's not bound book, so it kind of like literally kind of made sense because I'm not teaching traditional binding. But it wasn't actually until right at the end of the course, and I was asked, well, what is this course really about? And it was just like a bit of a little lightning strike, that it's really about letting go of anything that might be restricting your creative process. And so I used to take my art a bit more seriously, thinking it needed to be framed and on a wall and, you know, behind glass, and there's proper ways to do things. And since discovering artist books and doing, it's allowed me to sort of get back to my 10-year-old self and creating dioramas and that whole sort of playful experience. And that's where I sit much happier, because I just let my imagination free. And I'm not worrying about should I, shouldn't I, or what's the proper way to do this. You know, I've discovered that people engage with your work really well, and they're really interested. And I actually find that people engage better with this style of my work than they may necessarily do with when I've just got work that's hanging in an exhibition behind glass on the wall. So I really like the personal connection with everybody. So that's lovely.
Mm-hmm. And how timely. I mean, I think everywhere I seem to go, or even if I'm just listening to something, the term doom scrolling just keeps coming up quite a lot these days. And so it seems very timely to be able to engage with a course that is all about engagement and I guess that tactile nature of making, and then other people engage with it as well, beyond just your own personal experience. So that's very timely. So point, or beginning with simple structures, is definitely a concept that you really explain well. So I'm just going to play another video, which will be the last one, but just goes for 3 minutes, because I think it just says a lot more about what we're talking about. So let's play that now.
I'm going to share my love of the unknown and the happy accident to show you that you can let go and be excited that you don't know where you're going to end up, just letting your creative spirit loose. So we begin this course with really simple structures. We're going to be using a lot of foundational skills and really simple techniques, and I want to show you how, with just really simple knowledge of paper folding, becoming familiar with different types of papers and materials, your knowledge and your skill and your confidence will grow, and it's almost like a warm-up. Then I share with you the concertina structure. It's like one of my most favourite structures because there's so many possibilities. We start creating cascade books, which are a real love of mine, and they really allow you to use mark making, introduce materials, fabrics, textiles, stitching, share papers, tea bags, anything like that is really fun. The next thing I show you is mark making and my love for texture plates. I really wanted to share my printmaking process with you. You don't need to ever have had any printmaking experience, because I'm also going to show you other ways of mark making, really fun and free ways. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to send you off on a treasure hunt. I'm going to share my love for incorporating found objects or materials into your work. It can just add so much meaning. From there, we're going to create boxes. Maybe I'm part cat. I love boxes. Who doesn't love boxes? I mean, for goodness sake, I show you how to cover them, to use them as your artwork. And then as a special treat, I'm also going to show you how to make a bespoke box. I'll show you step by step, break it down, and you'll realise that actually I've got this, I can do that too. Then we're getting to the really fun stuff. I'm going to be introducing you to all sorts of ideas and concepts that will just really free you up and realise that you don't need to know how to bind a book. You can look at any everyday object. It can inspire you. We're not even worrying about turning a page. I'm going to teach you how you can create a series of work which will really enhance your flow, but I'll also show you how you can create a cohesive body of work. Even if your pieces are quite different, perhaps the most important thing you'll gain from this course is that artist books are a legitimate art form. They're not just a playful little side gig. And I'm going to take you on a really special field trip, which really will show you why writing about your work and being able to talk about it in a confident way just opens up so many opportunities. I'm going to help you kind of get over that bump of being afraid to show your work, to feel proud to show your work. And never for a moment feel that you're an isolated island. We're in this together. I'm going to support you, encourage you, and at the end, I'm hoping that you're going to feel just really inspired and excited, and most of all, proud of what you achieve, the progress that you make. So this is your chance to really let loose, to learn some new skills and techniques, and even find a new community of fellow artists that will inspire and support you. So come on the adventure with me.
Wow.
I know, that Catwoman. So many things rolled into that 3 minutes. And before I unpick that a little bit further, first of all, yes, thanks everyone for joining. So many people listening. Just wanted to share that, yes, Judy was looking at the utensils, inspires idea, love that. And Sally is looking for mentoring and has spent 25 years making books of sculpture. Yes, so love that, Sally. Love to hear from you. Thank you. So in that very intense video, I love that.
Oh my goodness.
Idea, so many ideas that I love there. Yeah. The idea of the warm-up was a great idea. And the box, I mean, I wish, where were you a few months ago when I needed that? And I was trying to put together a box that ended up having to have paper clips to hold it together. So yes, I'll be signing up for that. So there's something so joyful about creating something that you can turn, unfold, or hold in your hands. And I think that you did explain a little bit before about why that feels so different to you from just the flat thing. And I think the other thing that came out of this is, let's talk fodder or stash. Like, one of the most refreshing things about Unbound is how you invite people to start with what they already have, the scraps, the test prints, odds and ends. Why do you think those leftover materials are such a rich place to begin?
Well, often it's material that you've made yourself. So it might be like a print that just never quite worked. It might be prints that just haven't sold, you know, paintings, prints, whatever. It might be experiments. It might be ephemera that you keep, little scraps that you just love for some reason, some aesthetic quality just appeals to you, and you keep them. There might be mementos. And there's just so many ways that you can incorporate like your own work into folded structures or in artist books of some format, but also, ephemera, found pieces. So I think it just opens up opportunities. And I think when you create prints and you, as a printmaker, there's always a lot of waste of, ones that just didn't work, or parts, all of it's right, but not quite right. And so with the vitamin C, you can see that in the back corner, just over behind me here, that the tuna cans, they're actually wrapped in etchings that I did, which when I was learning the process, and I couldn't get these particular prints to print at all well. They were all sort of faded and sort of scratchy looking, but there was a quality that I liked about them. So they just went into my box of scrap pieces. And then when I was creating that piece, they were just perfect. And the colouring, the faded quality, the scratchiness, that if I had set out to try and create that for that piece, I would never have achieved it. And so it's so good to have stuff that you can draw from at any time, and you just don't know when something's going to sort of come into its own. And like, I've got this little piece here which I demonstrate in the course, and that's made from an experimental print that was never intended as a finished print, but it was just experimenting with process, and I was layering and layering and layering until I put so many layers on that the paper started to delaminate. But there were just really lovely colours and textures in there. And then it was when I was creating exemplars for this course, and I spotted it in the drawer, and it was just perfect to use as an example. And so that manky old print that just sort of never came to anything is now this really lovely object that,
So every time you speak, I'm trying to work out how I'm going to remember the things that I need to say. But first of all, I think printmaking, hands up, those that have gel plate prints that are just bursting through the drawers and the cupboards and all of those. So yeah, when we say printmakers, and I think in some of those clips we see you using a printing press, but it's not something that you have to have, is it?
Oh, no. Like you say, gel printing, absolutely. Stamping, any sort of mark making. It can be painting. I mean, we do a lot in the course where I'm just doing loose mark making and painting with wet media. It can be drawing, whatever media that you normally work with, but also fabric, people who work with fabric. So like working with cascade books, and, they would just be so suited to, like often I will layer in little parts of fabric into them. And so I think whatever medium you work in, there's potential. There's just so much potential. So yeah. There's always fodder.
And also, I often look at your work and I think, but you're more of like a paper engineer. You're more of like a proper, crafts person, because you can work in the 3D. And then when you were building the course and you were talking about how you're starting with the simple structures and building on those, because I was lucky enough to watch the filming, and it was like, yes, I could probably even do this. These do start from simple beginnings.
There's nothing that I'm teaching that is really complex, and I don't want to get into anything that's too complex, because you need to have quite a mathematical brain, and there are books out there which I kind of like to get out of the library, and on a rainy day when I feel like a challenge, I do like that because I do have a maths brain. But I much prefer to work with something simple as a base that then you can add so much more to. It gives you a simpler base, I think, gives you much more room for possibilities. So there's nothing highly technical and mathematical in the course at all. It's just what you choose to do with it. So I'm hoping that I'm just inspiring with lots of starting points that, I can't wait to see what people do using their own work. But like when I do my workshops, the best part of my workshops is when we have free play at the end, and people who have brought in their own work, they start chopping it up and creating with their own work. And that is the best part, because you can see their own creative voice coming out. And so, from something we've all made the same circle book out of colourful paper, but then they make their own pieces out of their own work. And that's where personality comes out. So yeah.
And one of the questions I had, which I think we touched on this with the vitamin C, the tins and the tuna tins with the dioramas. So talking about structure and how it can become part of the story, I think I've got an example here of a piece that's in the course. Can you describe what we're looking at now?
So that's it's a carousel book, which is inside a box, which is like a little boat shed. I made it like a little boat shed. And so the carousel book is actually made using old charts. I love to work with old maps. And so it's got a concertina base as the structure. And then as it opens out, you've got all these little dioramas that I created, these little scenes of offshore islands with clouds and then tiny little birds. And then it's got a little flagpole with a copper flag made out of some scrap metal to hold it open when it's fully open in its circular star form. And then when it all closes up, it was kind of springy, and it felt like it needed something to sit in when it's not fully on display. So I created this little, like a little boat shed out of scrap timber, old timber, and just to sort of really finish it off and add to the story. And yeah, so that was one piece that I made. I made the carousel book for the course. That was the first time I'd ever made that structure, and it had always been something that looked really complicated, and I thought, don't really want to go there, too complicated, get too bogged down. But then when I made a little mock-up to decide if I wanted to teach it in the course, I got so excited by the little possibility of the dioramas, and I thought, I have to do this. And it just sparked that idea of those little offshore island dioramas, and next thing you know, I've made the whole thing, and there it is. So that was an example of something that didn't inspire me because I thought it was too complicated. But then when I started on it and I had the inspiration, it was the inspiration was driving me to do it. And then I realized actually it's not complicated. You know, the inspiration's there. I'm so keen, and it was quite simple in the end. So it still took me a long time. It still took quite a long time.
Yeah. Again, being there, you did do that so well. I mean, walking into your space right from the beginning, it was that kind of like, the cabinet of curiosity experience of just all those, and treasures. Treasures is a word that you use a lot, but it did definitely seem like that, and that is a wonderful piece. And I mean, I kind of think I know the answer to this myself from watching the things, but is there a particular form or technique that always seems to surprise people once they try it?
Well, I think the explosion book is a really good example of a surprise piece, because it's something that folds away and can be quite insignificant as just a little square thing, but then the way that it can sort of pop out and create something quite surprising, depending on what materials you use or how big it is, what sort of imagery you put on it. So so this one here is also the explosion book, and I think it is quite nice because it's something that just disappears. But I mean, the other one that I would say is the concertina book, because we think of a concertina as just a really simple structure, just something that's obvious. Like we all probably made concertina books when we were at school, just very simple. But then they've got so much potential of using them to actually bind a book or to become a more complex structure, like flag books or the carousel book, so something like a concertina book is the basis is really simple, but then there's so many different ways that you can take it. So I mean, you just get me excited here.
Yeah, and you made the course. And I think that was the one for me, the concertina book, that I thought, yes, like I've pretty much just dabbled with the simple version of it, but you really did show how I could take it far beyond what I've done so far. And there's lots of things like this is
the concertina that I folded. I just folded it, and then I cut pop-outs, and then it becomes like just playing with a piece of cardboard. It's like, oh my goodness, look at the shapes that are forming. What else could that be? It can become really structural. So, Yeah.
Yes.
Board.
How to make it stop. And thanks everyone for the comments that you're making along the way. And Francie, yes, that does sound like the perfect way to utilize a huge stash of things that we may all have. And Phyllis also likes the idea of book as sculpture, definitely. It really is another way to open up how we see something. So it does feel like this course does give people permission to play, to explore, to stop the overthinking. Is there a takeaway that you hope students will carry with them after the course ends?
Well, I mean, so I just want people to feel inspired, to realize that you don't have to have a whole concept or solid idea as a starting point. That, if you're feeling stuck, sometimes just starting, just playing with materials, playing with color, working out a color palette, like anything like that, just the process of starting and working with materials and then seeing what evolves next. Before you know it, oh, what happens if I did this? Oh, look, there's a little scrap there. Maybe I'll add this to that. And before you know it, you've got like 6 projects on the go and there's a hell of a mess, but you're having a ball. And so it's that thing of I just really want to inspire people to play and experiment and be prepared to go off in tangents. Don't set a plan and think, I'm going to make this for this exhibition. And if it doesn't turn out like that, I'm going to be disappointed. It's like I'm going to start creating and see what happens. And hopefully you'll create something you didn't expect, because it's one thing to keep creating the same sort of work and then you're not surprised. It's like, oh yeah, that's my work. But I think it's really exciting when you don't know what's going to come. And that's what I really think is the really magic thing of it's all those surprises, when you surprise yourself and you surpass your own goals and what you think that you're capable of. So surprises.
Yeah, what a valuable thing. And what if that's a takeaway that you can get about surprising yourself? That is amazing, because who wouldn't want that?
Yeah,
I said in the intro that we were going to talk about this idea of giving yourself permission to play, to experiment, and not to get something perfect. Was that something that you had to learn yourself, to not be perfect?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a perfectionist born and bred, and it has its benefits, but it also has its obvious downfall. And I used to paint, and I used to plan exactly what it was I was going to paint, and I would do a full color pastel drawing of my painting, and I would grid up my canvas, and then I would create my painting to look like the pastel drawing. And then if it didn't turn out quite how I'd envisaged it, because I knew what my composition and everything was going to be, then I'd be disappointed. I was always chasing this impossible sort of goal of perfection. And then it was when I started printmaking and realizing that it was the happy accidents, when you can't always control all of the process. When you put your work through the press and the ink does its thing, you don't know quite exactly what's going to happen. And it's all those unexpected things. So when the ink reacts in a different way, or it pulls off the plate, or you've got interesting things happening with layers. And it was all those like nice surprises that, I could really use that in a different way. And I think that's one of the things about printmaking that teaches you that you can't control all of those things. And I like not to control. I like to put myself in a situation where I can't control what's going to happen, because that's when I'm going to surprise myself with what I create. So and that's also the thing of working in multiples, and just as inspiration sort of hits you and you think, oh, what if I took this idea and I put it onto something else, and then you've got multiple things going on. It just leaves room for lots of tangents. So
Yeah.
Question.
Yeah. And I was just thinking too, like we all have, a general intention when we do something, but also with the gel plate, even you've kind of got I won't say vague, but you've got an idea of how you think it's all going to go. But still, when you peel the paper off the plate, you can still be surprised, sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a not so good way.
Sometimes the layers that you're thinking, oh, this one's not going to work, I'm aiming for when it's the ghost print that's going to work. But then it's like by accident, or you might be cleaning the plate and you're just printing, like cleaning off the plate, and you peel it off and you've got this amazing texture. It's like, that's really good. Put it in your stash and you're going to use it.
Yeah. I think this course is going to speak to so many people. And I just wanted to share that Wendy, yes, looks like Wendy's signed up, and she's going to have to stop eating and sleeping to have enough time to do more. But at least, yes, if you sign up now, you've got lifetime access. So when you do have that holiday booked or that time away from, whatever it is that takes up your time in life, you can set aside time to do it. And I apologise if I'm going to pronounce your name wrong, but Rafia says, I do enjoy eco-printing. I'm thinking, how can I use stitching and textile if I do this course? Is that something
absolutely eco-printing? Yeah, and like we talked about with the Cascade box, but also just learning lots of layering techniques with some of the other structures. They would just work so nicely with incorporating stitching and textiles into them, whether it's in like a collage form or actually in some form of structural form. So I think there's so much possibility with any sort of media, really.
And obviously you wouldn't want to lose the tactileness of the fabric, but you can still use fabric as covers as well. And
but also
in other forms and
fabric. So you can, you could apply like a watered down gesso or some sort of starch and stiffen your fabric and then stitch it so that it folds in a certain way to create sort of three-dimensional structures. And I mean, I don't teach those sort of processes, but I'm hoping that the idea of the structures and things, and as we go through learning about mark making and the process of coming up with the ideas, that you'll be able to see that you can incorporate so many other things. That's, I think, I see this as a launch pad to go forth into the world, and it gives you that confidence to now look at other people's work, other artists' books online, all sorts of other media, and think, I could use that in some way to create something that I've now been inspired by. So, yeah.
And I think one of the things for me, like just being in your presence, and I think this is also true of many of the Take Two courses, having that tutor in the room with you all of that time, you can't help but have some of that thinking rub off on you. You end up sort of thinking, what if I thought like that? And so, yes, when I was watching you, it was great to suddenly adopt some of those, because you're so infectious and so enthusiastic, to suddenly sort of think, I don't have to be limited, and it definitely changes the way that you think.
And idea. So in the community group, if you're posting work online or you're having trouble with something, sharing your work online in the group, ideas will spark with other members, that are other students, but also, I'll see things that you're creating that's going to spark ideas in me. And I think it's that two-way sort of conversation that goes on, or multiple conversation that goes on, where like, but I can see, it's that whole sparking thing going on. So, and sometimes I think that's what's important about community is, sometimes you don't need the other person or people to give you an answer to something. It's actually just speaking it out loud, saying, this is what I'm creating, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm trying to, and as you put it into your own words, you realize, it all suddenly makes sense to you. It's like an epiphany, but nobody's actually said anything. They've just been there to listen. So, I think that's a really valuable thing, is actually having sounding boards. So that's where a community is so beneficial.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're going to get just as much out of it as your students will as well.
I'm only doing it for my own benefit.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
And Patricia says that, I just love the idea of starting without an idea and then surprising myself with what has been created. Like, that's gold, surely. And Mickey, yes, Mickey's already with the Cascade book, and I totally was as well when I saw it. Now, we did have some questions come in before we went live. One of them from Jenny was about if she signed up acknowledging the course. So don't worry about that now, Jenny. That was something that will be explained to students as they signed up, but I just wanted to let you know that we did see the question. Lisa wanted to know, what is your preferred glue for assembly, and is archival quality a concern?
Okay, so glues is like a whole thing, and I do sort of cover like quite a variety of glues that I use. I've got sort of some favorites, right from like using a basic glue stick. Always try to use acid-free if you can. A basic glue stick is good for small tasks or sort of lightweight tacking, through to like any sort of a wheat paste. I include a homemade cornflour paste recipe in the course. And I often use the Yamamoto rice paste that you can buy from an art store, because it's a nice lightweight paste that doesn't mark your work in any way, and you can easily wipe it away. For things where you need stronger tack, I either use a PVA glue, making sure that it's not a wood glue, and that's really good when you want something like if you're creating a little cover for a book and it needs to hold quickly, like you know once you're folding all your tabs in. If it's just something like glue stick's not strong enough, paste takes too long to dry, but the PVA tacks really quickly. Or I use EVA with a little roller, and that's good for covering boxes and bigger book covers, things like that. So yeah, I go through all of that and offer alternatives and suggestions. So yeah, and it is important. It's not important when you're experimenting to be archival, but it's important if you're creating work that's going to sell or be in a gallery, that you don't want your work to fall apart or to discolor. So if you're using sort of poor quality materials, and like I really try and discourage people from using things like double-sided tape, because it doesn't take very long. Within about 5 years, the tape will discolor the paper, the piece will fall apart, and you'll get this horrible staining through your pages. And so you don't want that to happen when you've got work that you've sold to somebody. So yeah, it is important.
Yeah, good advice. And it is amazing how something that seems quite stuck at the time, that later on it's not so stuck anymore.
Yeah, I mean, humidity, heat and humidity, papers move and things can just pop off, and before you know it, didn't think about that. So yeah, it is important to experiment and practice. Yeah.
And a couple of other questions and comments. Marta is one of us that also admires Heidi Kyle's Art of the Fold. How would you compare your artistic style of bookmaking with Heidi Kyle's? Do you incorporate a variety of styles in your artist books?
Yeah, I really admire, like, her book, The Art of the Fold, is on my bookshelf, and it's like full of penciled notes, and I've made quite a few of her structures. She's they can be very mathematical and quite complex, some of them. So it can be a bit daunting when people open it up like a textbook and like, oh my goodness, where do I begin? But yeah, so I have used quite a few of them, but I really think it comes down to, like I mentioned before, your own mark making, incorporating your own style of work, whether you're stitching or your own style of ephemera. So like with pieces where I'm using a lot of my own mark making, I think that gives my work its own personality. And you see that when I'm doing workshops and people are creating the same structures that we're all making, but using their own work, you can see their own personality come out of it. And so like with the Art of the Fold, she designed the little blizzard box, but again, it's all like, putting my own mark making and little tags and little surprises within that makes it more personal to me. And then how I might house something, I put my own little turn on that. So yeah, I do use her structures. I really admire them. Yeah, but as far as style, I think everybody you think that you don't have a style. You think, oh, what is my style? And I do all sorts of things, and I don't try and stick to a certain look. But I think when I've had an exhibition and all of my work is put together, it turns out that there is some sort of cohesive quality there, and it's usually to do with my intense detail and colour palette.
Yes, and your incredible, beautiful aesthetic. And, you know, the course doesn't repurpose any of the projects in Art of the Fold.
No.
Because it's you and it's your techniques and your process. And I think they can definitely work as companions, but also having had that book myself, looking at you, I didn't feel like I needed to constantly be measuring and working things out mathematically. The way that you show it seems achievable and also very inspiring. And I just wanted to say, yes, that Deborah says that she's obsessed with artist books, but terrified by mathematical folding.
Don't worry, we don't get into anything like that. No, it's not complicated.
No, and because of your background, and again, maybe people want to go back and look at the other talk that we did, I think that you've just got this way of deconstructing things in a simplified way that do make it achievable, because your brain does work in how to translate something into 3D, which, we can come along and be inspired with that, and that does make it easy for us as well. Yes, and epiphany is a good word, and she's just had one about why she is struggling with inspiration. So, yeah, soon you'll be wondering about how to stop, because on set that was constantly something that we were like, too many ideas.
That word, that epiphany word is just, I've just got an idea from that. It's like,
no. Stop this woman from having more ideas. Erin says she feels like she's finally found the perfect course that can bring together all the techniques she's learned in other courses.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. So Judy also had a question. She says the prints that she's made over the years that she can recycle into interesting books, how can I use them in a way that will preserve the print in whole within a book of her own making? Well...
So you might see behind me, there's a print here that I've made recently for an coming exhibition. And so I used one of my dud proof prints to make this little board book. So I cut the whole print up, and the interesting thing was how the story changes from looking at the whole image to looking at part of the image as it sort of goes through the book. And so, that's one way that you can use a print to create a book. Yes. But also, just the whole, structured forms that, you can cut up your work and put it into a folded structure. That's just another example. There's, books like so many ways that your work could go into structures, little fold out flaps. And that's something that I'm really interested in. When I was creating this little book, I'm really interested to explore that idea further of taking a two-dimensional image and turning it in, using that entire print in a three-dimensional form, and how it changes the way that the story is read. So I think there's so much to explore with that. So because I love my lino cut process, that's something I really want to sort of dive much deeper into.
Yeah, so much to explore. And for those listening, when Toni says dud print and then she shows us something really amazing, don't get overwhelmed by that, because yes, I can assure you there's plenty.
Weeks and weeks on that. So, that's not just something I whipped up.
Yeah, but there's plenty of places where people who, and again, that's why this course is so brilliant, because it does cater for all levels, from the practice printmaker to those of us that have got a lot of stash from gel prints or lino prints or other things. And again, the texture plates and the mark making that you do, just fabulous ways of putting stuff on paper without having to, draw or have all that, really intricate lino cutting skills, I think.
Yeah. I mean, just even repurposing paper that you've got, like gift wrap and junk mail and stuff like that, just starting by playing with just paper that you have around the house. If there's some colours or patterns or textures that appeal to you, and just literally having a play box that you draw from to begin to, develop ideas and build your confidence, then sort of gradually progress to more precious items that then you might start to chop up. And you can always photocopy more precious work and experiment with that in a way, so that then you're not ruining, a really good print, but you really want to use it. So photocopy it and play like that. So there's so many.
Yeah, the playbook, exactly. You don't even need to spend time working on putting something on the paper. You can just use paper and get that playbook and experience, and just have that sort of the hands moving into making those structures and playing with other forms.
It's just a tactile experience,
Yeah, well, the time has rushed on, and as we may have mentioned, the doors to your fabulous course, Unbound, are open. Before we finish up, just a couple of questions. What's the most unexpected object you've ever turned into a book?
Oh, well, I guess my tin cans are the most well-known one, and that was kind of me. I made that book when it was for a selected exhibition, and we were challenged to sort of get away from the folded page, and I was like, right, I really want to get away from the folded page. And my son eats a lot of tuna, so I had a lot of tin cans, and I like dioramas, and it was like, right, how can I make this a book? So
yeah, I love the dioramas, and I think in that video, which people should be able to see on the website, the tunnel books that you do, there are so many fabulous formats. Again, it will be how to stop, which will be the problem, which is a great problem to have, really. Here's a random question. What's always on your work table, no matter what you're making?
Oh, no matter what I'm making. Oh, that's a tricky question. It's like if you honestly saw my work table, it's a mess.
No.
So I always have my cutting mat there and bone folder. There's always paper. There's always just scraps of paper. And if I'm stuck with where to start, often I'll just fold something. Like one thing that I did recently, I was in a bit of a funk, and I just got a book out of the library, a really simple little book, and just started folding shapes. And then from that came lots more ideas. So I think just having to hand just lots of scrap paper, like we talked about, just, cheap gift wrap, found papers, brown papers, really nice. And just having that to hand to play with whenever a little idea sparks, and a glue stick, just, roughly put things together. And then, and then ideas come. And it's nice to play. And it's
nothing will be going in. Nothing will be going into the recycling bin ever again. So it's been amazing chatting to you today. Now I'm just going to do the rapid fire questions, because that's always fun. No pressure. So if I said every artist must believe,
you must believe in your own worth as an artist. I think that label of am I an artist? Just believe it, own it, and be it. If you're a creative person, you're an artist. So just own it.
Yeah, love that. Every artist must avoid
listening to too many rules and conventions, listening to all the shoulds and should nots. Don't get stuck in your head thinking, oh, should I, shouldn't I? If you feel like doing something, follow your desires, follow your inspiration, just do it.
Every artist must appreciate
the value of play. Like, you can take your art too seriously sometimes, and you're always working to a deadline or for a purpose. But the best thing you can do sometimes is just play for play's sake, play with materials, play with process, and see what happens. And yeah, try and do it without a fixed agenda.
Yeah, so true. Every artist can.
Every artist can make bad art. But every artist is able to achieve it, whatever they set their mind to, I think. And so, you know, it's not going to happen the first time you do it necessarily. That's what practice, that's why it's called an arts practice. So stick at it. If it doesn't work one way, try another way, keep going. Yeah, you'll get there. So believe, and yeah.
Yeah, but now through Unbound, we can just cut up that bad art and make it into something amazing. Just in another form.
Good fodder.
So lastly, every artist must have
a good stash. No. Artists must have a community of supporters, I think, and that might just be a single friend that is of a similar mind. They may not be an artist the same as you, but it's just somebody that you can really talk to on any level and check in with regularly. Yeah, I've recently got a couple of friends that we just check in with each other, and it's just so supportive for your arts practice to help you turn up every day. But also having a broader range of, whether it's an online community or people you meet in a workshop, just people that are supportive. Like family can be really supportive, but it's not necessarily the kind of support you need. You know, oh, that's nice, darling, you know, and it's like, yes, but what do you really, you know, you need constructive help sometime, and you need to be able to sort of download about the troubles you're having. So I really believe that a supportive community is so important.
Yeah, definitely. What a perfect ending to today's fabulous chat. Toni, it's been a joy to hear your perspective. Thank you so much. And if you're listening and you're curious about how to turn the scraps on your desk into something completely fresh, definitely check out Unbound, Toni's new course with vibratestake2.com. Enrollments are now open.
Oh, thank you, Tara, and thank you to the whole team. It's been absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in now and in the future. And we'll see you next time. Please post your comments. We'd love to hear from you.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Till next time.